The men who worked in these cellars sometimes wore masks of iron, not for warmth and not for ceremony. They wore them because the bottles around them were exploding. Deep beneath the chalk hills of northern France, cellar workers moved through rooms stacked with wine that was quietly building pressure. Every so often, a bottle burst like a gunshot, throwing razor-edged glass across the room. One explosion could trigger the next until thousands shattered in a chain reaction, and a fortune vanished in minutes. The wine was champagne, and its famous bubbles, the ones we now associate with joy, began their life as something closer to a bomb. Today, that same wine is the sound of celebration itself. A cork at midnight, a bottle raised at a wedding, a drink poured for victories, coronations, and moments. People want the world to notice. So how did a dangerous defect become the most celebrated drink on earth? The answer involves a monk who tried to stop the bubbles, an English scientist who described how to create them, a widow who gambled her company on Russia, emperors who carried champagne into war, and growers who rioted to defend a single word. For most of its history, wine from Champagne was not supposed to sparkle. It was a still, pale wine, losing badly to the richer reds of Burgundy farther south. The region's cold climate caused fermentation to stop during winter. Winemakers bottled what appeared to be calm wine. Then spring warmed the cellars, the yeast woke up, and fermentation restarted inside the sealed bottle. Carbon dioxide had nowhere to escape. Pressure built, corks flew, bottles burst. To the winemakers, the bubbles were not magic. They were evidence that something had gone wrong. Their goal was not to create them, it was to get rid of them. That brings us to the biggest myth in the story. Dom Perignon was a real Benedictine monk who managed the cellars at the Abbey of Haut-Villers in the late 1600s. Legend says he invented champagne and cried, "I am drinking the stars," when he tasted it. It is a beautiful line. It is also advertising. The quotation appeared long after his death, and far from inventing sparkling champagne, Perignon worked to control the unwanted fermentation. His real achievement was blending grapes from different vineyards to make more consistent, higher quality wine. The monk did not discover the bubbles. He tried to discipline them. So who explained how to make wine sparkle deliberately? The oldest clear written description points, awkwardly for French pride, across the channel. In 1662, the English physician Christopher Merret described merchants adding sugar or molasses to finished wine to make it brisk and sparkling. England also had a crucial advantage. Coal-fired furnaces produced stronger glass than the fragile bottles commonly used in France. The most French luxury in the world had found two essential tools in England: added sugar and a bottle strong enough not to detonate. But stronger glass did not make the work safe. A champagne bottle can hold roughly 6 atmospheres of pressure, around 3 times that of a car tire. Before producers could control the chemistry, they guessed how much sugar to add. Too little, and the wine stayed flat. Too much, and the cellar became a minefield. Some houses lost huge portions of their stock. Workers covered their faces and bodies against flying glass. They were perfecting a drink that could blind them. Even when a bottle survived, the second fermentation left dead yeast inside. The wine sparkled, but it was cloudy. Pouring it into another bottle removed the sediment, but also lost pressure, wine, and profit. The bubbles had survived the bottle. Now they had to survive being cleaned. The person who solved that problem was a widow. In 1805, Barbe Nicole Clicquot lost her husband and took control of his wine business at 27. She entered a volatile industry during years of war, blockade, and collapsing trade. Then she gambled. In 1814, while European markets were still strangled by conflict, Clicquot sent more than 10,000 bottles toward Russia. Her shipment reached buyers as restrictions were lifting, and the Russian market embraced it. Champagne was no longer merely surviving war. It was turning war into a sales opportunity, but the wine still carried that cloud of yeast. Around 1816, Clicquot and her cellar team developed riddling. Bottles were placed neck down at an angle and turned a little each day. Slowly, the sediment moved into the neck. where it could be expelled before the bottle was resealed without sacrificing all its pressure. Champagne could finally be consistently clear, bright, and brilliant in the glass. The liquid had been tamed. But perfecting the liquid was only half the story. Champagne still had to become a symbol. That transformation began in Reims, where French kings were crowned. Wine from the surrounding region flowed at coronation banquets, tying champagne to monarchy, ceremony, and political power long before sparkling wine dominated production. When champagne houses began selling the new drink across Europe, they inherited that royal association. The bubbles made it even more theatrical. Still wine sat quietly. Champagne arrived with a bang, rose in foam, flashed in candlelight, and demanded attention. It was almost designed for public celebration. Then came Napoleon. He maintained a relationship with the champagne merchant Jean-Remy Moet, placed orders, visited Epernay, and helped connect the drink with imperial spectacle and military campaigns. Champagne travelled with armies, diplomats, rulers, and the courts that received them. Victors drank it to celebrate. Defeated elites served it to the victors. By the 19th century, producers were selling more than taste. They were selling the feeling of standing close to power. There was still one thing to change: the sweetness. Champagne was often extremely sugary. In 1874, another formidable widow, Louise Pommery, launched a commercially successful dry style called Brut. That sharper style became the model most of the world recognizes today. The product was now strong, clear, dry, and loaded with meaning. Inevitably, people began to fake it. In the early 1900s, disease and disastrous harvests devastated local vineyards. Some merchants secretly bought cheaper grapes from outside the region and sold the resulting wine under the champagne name. The growers erupted. In 1910 and 1911, thousands rioted. They stormed warehouses, smashed barrels, burned buildings, and poured fraudulent wine into the streets until the government sent troops. Out of that chaos came stricter rules defining where champagne could come from. The name had become so valuable that people were prepared to fight for it. That protection remains central today. Champagne is not simply a style of sparkling wine. It is a legally defended place, tradition, and production system. During the Second World War, when German forces occupied the region and requisitioned vast quantities of wine, some producers hid prized bottles behind false walls in the chalk cellars. The tunnels that once protected workers from exploding glass were now protecting champagne from an army. Today, hundreds of millions of bottles leave the region in a typical year, and everyone is still a small, contained explosion, held in check by thick glass, a wired cork, and centuries of accumulated knowledge. So the next time you hear that cork leave the bottle with a bang, remember what the sound carries. A wine that began as a mistake, a monk who tried to stop the bubbles and received credit for creating them, an Englishman who explained how to make wine sparkle, workers in iron masks, a widow who cleared the wine and conquered Russia, kings who made it royal, an emperor who made it victorious, and growers who fought to protect its name. The bubbles that once terrified the cellar workers are now the whole point. A drink that once blew itself apart became how the world marks a moment worth remembering. Champagne was never just a drink, it became a signal. Something happened here, and it mattered. If this story surprised you, subscribe for more hidden histories behind the drinks and everyday things that shape the world.